Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Cam. I'm here in one of the central squares of Copenhagen, in front of Tivoli Gardens over here. And I'm going to take you on a little tour today. And this is going to be the vehicle that we're going to be on. So this is not a Cycling Without Age Trishaw, because Cycling Without Age is actually not really operating as it usually is at the moment, because of course, as you all know, all elders worldwide are under strict lockdown, so we can't really do much. But we're doing a lot of other amazing things. Just to mention a few things, like in our chapter in Portugal, they do what they call balcony talk. So they take people from like psychologists and healthcare workers out on the trishaw and visit elders who will be standing on their balcony chatting and just addressing their concerns and their issues and helping them in different ways. Other chapters are going grocery shopping, medication shopping for the elders, so simply trying to be of use in a time like this. And it feels immensely satisfactory to be able to actually do something despite the situation at the moment. But we're going to be today on a cargo bike. We have probably about 40,000 of these kind of cargo bikes in Copenhagen, and hopefully we'll see some of them as we ride along. Now, I was supposed to have actually had Pernille with me as well. She was supposed to meet me here on this square, but I'm not quite sure where she is. But let me just show you this bike here. So it's a Christiania bike, and some of the other field schools, they went to Christiania as well, right? I think there was a little bit of weed smoking going on, beer drinking and other things. But they make these bikes out there, and it's quite wonderful. It has this huge box as well that you can open like this.
Surprise! Oh, here we are.
So, say hi to Pernille.
Nice to meet you, everybody.
She's going to be my co-host today, and I'll hand over the camera to you, Pernille.
All right. Okay. Nice to meet you. Good to see you again, Cam. I'm going to be the co-host on the ride, and I would love to answer your questions. You can share your questions, and I'm going to see if I can make this work the best way possible. Actually, we already have Wendy.
I think we'll do this.
No.
Oh, there it is.
Hey,
yay,
yes. Yeah. Cool. All right. Okay. So we will talk about resilience and Copenhagen, and hopefully you're gonna enjoy the scenery. We are, as everybody else in the whole world, in a pandemic situation. So this is what Copenhagen looks like right now. My voice is a little bit funny because we are riding over cobblestone. Tivoli.
And now this is what we see right in front of us is just a typical Copenhagen bike lane. It's probably about 3 meters wide. Can you hear us now?
Sure can.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds
Let
great.
us know. Let us know if, in case there is any kind of technical problem with the sound, or if there's too much wind. There's a bus.
So we're going to be talking about, both the good and the bad and the ugly of Copenhagen. So of course Copenhagen has a lot of. I think you turned it back again.
Oh.
Did you? Okay. So it has a lot of really wonderful things, a lot of great bicycle infrastructure, but of course it also has a lot of stuff that we don't really like. And we cycle a lot around, Pernille and I, in Copenhagen, both with the trishaws and on our own bikes. And we always talk about the good stuff and the bad stuff, the stuff that we'd like to improve.
Yes. Oh. Er vi ikke dejlige? Tak. Okay, so I think it makes a lot of people happy to see cargo bikes and to see people on cargo bikes. But I just want to ask you, Ole, do you think it's safe sitting like this?
No, it's not safe.
Oh.
But who cares?
What's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst that can happen? It's good fun.
Yes. And it actually, I feel like it's something that motivates you, the cars, the other cyclists, everybody to be mindful of each other. You know, you have to take care. We always have to take care of each other.
Actually,
So,
you know, we have a term that we use when we're out cycling, and that is we call it bicycle parkour. You're probably familiar with parkour, people you know, climbing and jumping over buildings. We do it with our bikes, and we do it whenever we get to a junction that we think is too car-centric. Like some of these junctions with, you know, tons of arrows, and you know, it takes you forever to get past if you're a cyclist. We don't think we should accept that. So there's a little bit of activism going on,
yeah.
where we actually just cut across in the most direct fashion that we can possibly think of.
Have you noticed that I'm wearing my cycling shoes today?
Oh yeah, yeah.
These are my favorite shoes for cycling. When you're wearing heels and you're on a bike, you don't even feel it. But if you're walking and have to run and stuff like that, it's a little bit more tricky. So cycling and heels go very, very well together. Contrary to popular belief that you have to dress up as a fitness instructor
Yeah.
to do cycling, I actually disagree.
We don't do that in Copenhagen. We don't really dress up for the activity of cycling. In fact, we don't really consider ourselves to be cyclists. We consider ourselves to be bike users, people who are simply just using the bike to get from A to B. And the city kind of lends itself to that as well. As you can see right now, that the bike lane is the same width as the car lane. And of course, now is a time of year when, well, actually today is one of the first big days after the end of the lockdown.
Yeah.
And people are beginning to get back out again. Finally, there are actually people on the road. But during the pandemic, we've also seen a surge in bicycle users, haven't we?
Yes, absolutely. Because as you know, we have been sitting a lot inside, and what else is there to do than to check the emails and to go and look at the fridge? So actually, a lot of people, I just heard recently in France, for instance, the general person has gained 5 pounds.
Wow.
During this time, yes. So I think people have really felt the need to get outside and to start riding their bikes. So I think this goes for Copenhagen and for a lot of cities around the world.
Do we want to just talk about, so what does it do to a city like Copenhagen that it has a good cycling infrastructure, the way that we see it right now?
Oh, just a sec. The typical, okay, I'm gonna check the
questions?
Question. There it is. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Excited about this. I will take the last one.
I can read it to you if that'd be easier.
Do the typical Danish street parties and street events tend to get in the way of bike infrastructure? Or are they mainly on pedestrian streets or car roadways? Okay. Hi, Wendy. Okay, so let me just go back again. All right, so what would you say about the typical Danish kind of street party or street event? What are your thoughts? Where would that be?
Look, let's maybe just film and see here. This is one of the first days after the opening of after the lockdown.
Yes.
So people are out everywhere having a fantastic time.
Yes. This is the first that people get to go out, and of course everybody has missed that. I think I would actually say that the Danish street parties, blocking down streets, is not something that we do that often in Copenhagen.
Well, no. Well, apart from what's it called, distortion.
Yes, there is a very famous street party that where it's the whole city center and parts of the greater Copenhagen is completely locked down, and there are, you know, techno parties, and it's really very loud, and that's a time when they lock down the streets. But actually most of the events, I feel like, when we close down streets is like marathons, sports events.
Why don't you why don't you turn around and sit facing this way?
Okay.
Okay, but you can do that as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. So but when does the cycling, and thank you very much for your question, when does the cycling infrastructure kind of get away of other events, would you say, Ole? When is cycling infrastructure in the way?
Never.
No, we can't really say that. I think it's really, you know, because cycling is like almost you're moving like water moves through a creek. Yeah, you can always get through on a bike, and the cycling infrastructure doesn't ever seem like a barrier. We don't have barriers between the cycle path and the road, so it doesn't really seem to be in the way. That would be, I hope that I answered the question. I think that's how I would say it. This street, now I'm gonna turn the camera around again, is one of the absolute best streets in Copenhagen to go out.
And it doesn't have any cycling infrastructure.
It actually doesn't.
It's a complete mixture. And people are just walking all over the place in it as well.
Yes. It's called Little Paris. And I guess it just feels very vibrant, and it has the best cafes. Okay, who's this? What is this? Hi! Hey! Can we hug again? Oh, hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Canada.
I'm on a crackle bike.
Yeah, like that's a surprise.
Yes.
Hey, Michael.
How you doing, Ole?
How are you doing?
Good, man.
Hey.
Good. How many people are in that little phone of yours?
Yeah, so Cam, how many people are on this call?
We've got about 30
30 people on the call.
Cool.
from Victoria, from Tokyo, from Calgary, from Ontario, from New York.
Cool. Hello, everybody.
So,
The first day back
some
out.
of you, as I can see on some of the comments here, you've already guessed that this is Michael Colville-Anderson, a good friend of ours. He's also an expert in urbanism.
I'm going to get my wine while I'm eating.
Exactly.
Nice.
He is also the host of the TV show The Life Size City, which is now on its, is it the 19th season? No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
We're filming season 4. Season 3 and 4 will be out in the autumn in Canada.
Come to Victoria.
Are you going to be in Victoria?
We have the highest mode share of cycling in the country.
Yeah, it's not a bike program though, but
But we have, other things.
we never know. We might come to Vancouver and maybe Victoria, but we don't know what's going on yet. So.
All right, but I guess Michael is invited. Is that correct?
Yes, of course.
So cool. All right.
It's kind of weird just to look at the back. Can I just see the other side for a second?
Yes.
There you go. All right,
Yeah,
all right, cool.
Cam.
Hey,
Yeah.
Cam.
All right. Okay. So let's do an interview with Michael. I will maybe ask you a couple of questions, and then I invite you guys to think of what you would like to ask Michael. He's traveled the world. He knows about urban planning, and he's just a great guy. So I would like to ask you something about resilience, because that's what the point of Cam's program is. What would you say that a resilient city is?
Okay, I think a resilient city is one that engages the citizens in its quest for resilience. It's one thing to have a resilience officer, that's fine. A resilience office, even better. But a resilient city is one that actually engages the citizens, has them at the table, listens to what they say about their specific neighborhood, instead of this helicopter view from the city planning office where you have this whole map of the city. It's, oh, they have some problems over there. No, you bring the people in and you talk to them and you say, what do you need in your neighborhood? Can that be transferred to another neighborhood? How can we scale this up? So I think the most resilient cities are the one that employ the most resilient citizens, and that is all the citizens of a city.
How do you think Copenhagen will change after this pandemic?
I think generally, I've been doing a lot of interviews about, what's life going to be like? And Man, I mean, I'm a bit worried generally for public transport everywhere in the world because of this perception that, oh, it's, it's a petri dish. And so I think already now, I think I can see that there are a lot more cyclists, even in the best bicycle city in the world, because some of the people who might otherwise take the bus or the train or the metro are saying, okay, I'm just going to hop on the bike. So it's kind of early days. We've just opened up now, as you can see. We're all out at the cafe. Life is back like 3 days ago, really. It opened up and it feels like it's normal again. But I think Copenhagen is going to change because we're going to have a different reception of public space. I think a lot of people in every city in the world, not just Copenhagen, have discovered their city, in a different way. We've been able to go out here. We haven't been locked in like was necessary in France, and Spain, and Italy. So I think people are going, wow, there's a park. It's just like 20-minute walk from my house, and there's this huge park. I've never seen it before. I think we're going to have a much more of a sensory perception of our city, and we're going to want to protect that. We're going to want more of it. We're going to want more green space because we experienced it, on a scale that we haven't done really in most of our lives. We've explored the city like never before. So I think the citizens are going to rally for more green space, better public space in Copenhagen. I think we're going to ride bikes a lot more, and I think the politicians are going to respond to that because they're in this with us.
What have the advantages been and the disadvantages of Copenhagen in this situation?
In the COVID-19?
Yeah.
Disadvantages, I don't think really there are any. I don't think there's really anywhere on the planet I would have rather been during the crisis than here. I think everything has been tackled very well, and I think the advantages are that we realize that with this political system we have, with this culture that we have in not just in Denmark, but in the Scandinavian countries and the Baltic countries, we realize, wow, if we all get together, we can do things, and we can act as one. And I think that has been the most amazing thing. So I think that advantage, we're all realizing we kind of beat this. We kind of, we're not all, hugging everybody on the, strangers on the street and everything, but we're kind of like, wow, we did this together. And I think that is just good for any society, long-term and short-term. So I think disadvantages, I don't really see any at all about the way that Denmark has tackled the COVID-19 crisis.
Do you think that people in Copenhagen will cycle more in the future than they already are?
I think it has been rising consistently over the past 20 years, and with the unfortunate skepticism about public transport around the world, I think that that's going to affect it here as well. I was just having a conversation with my friend that I'm here at the cafe with about, like, I live outside the city center, and I haven't been really cycling around. I've been working from home. So I want to go out and see like the world's busiest bicycle street, which was already that. And I want to see, like, is it crazy? Like, are there more people cycling? I can sort of feel it outside my own apartment on this busy street that I'm on, but I think I want to see some data. I want to maybe do some data myself, and I want to see. I think people are going to cycle more. Yeah, if they're still going to be a little bit paranoid, and that's not a bad thing to be paranoid. It's not a negative word in this context, but I think a lot of people are going to say, yeah, I could just take a bike, which they should have done already.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a benefit. I think there will be more people cycling in Copenhagen from the current 63% of Copenhageners who ride a bike every day. I think we're going to have an increase.
I would love to hear your question, Trevin. What was your question?
Yeah, hi, greetings from Vancouver.
Okay, I'm just going to turn the camera around.
No
I need to listen.
I don't know if you can see
I'm here.
me or... Okay,
no,
great.
Yeah, I can see you. I'm looking on the other side of the phone, dude.
Perfect. I just had a quick question. I think this Zoom meeting is incredible to be able to see sort of the progression that Copenhagen is able to show the rest of the world in sustainable development. Vancouver in particular is kind of leading the way maybe in Canada in terms of bicycle transportation. But I was wondering sort of what you think the best way to transform North American culture to adopt more sustainable / 15-minute cities and convenient ways of sustainable transportation rather than our car dominant culture.
Right. Okay.
Okay, all right, over to Michael.
I think really what I've been doing for 12 years, working in 100 cities around the world, a lot of my job at the beginning is education. You I have to explain to politicians in cities around the world why they need to do this. You know, oh, we have to build bike infrastructure for those people I see riding a bike today. No, you have to build bicycle infrastructure for the 25% of your population of your city that could ride a bike. That's my estimate. 25% of every city in the world could be riding a bike if there were safe, protected, best practice bicycle infrastructure in place. So I think really that is the key, is actually, what I often say is don't talk about bikes. It's not about bikes. It's about the big picture in a city. Bikes are integral. They are really the first thing that we need to consider if we're trying to make our cities more life-sized, if we're trying to improve the quality of life, improve the public health. Bicycles are the absolute first thing that we do. They are the beachhead. And I think really continuing the conversation, but also not only a bike. I know from many bicycle advocate friends, you know, they're going, oh, people are tired of hearing about bikes now. Yeah, me too, in a way, right? It's about the bigger picture, and bicycles are just merely a part of that. So changing the conversation to be more inclusive about everything else. Bikes and infrastructure, protected bike lanes in a network, absolutely important, but that needs to connect up with pedestrian streets. We need to remove the number of cars. We need to, you know, have the conversation about how, you know, it's not car parking anymore, it's car storage, right? Cars are parked, you know, immobile 96% of their lifetime. And, you know, and we're just funding that. You know, the people who don't drive cars are funding that for everybody else. So I think the conversation needs to change more than anything else. I am optimistic in my work and, you know, traveling so much and meeting politicians everywhere that they're kind of getting it now. It's kind of sinking into the sort of the thicker skulls around the world where, okay, yeah, because it's not just Copenhagen, blah, 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 Copenhagen. So it's actually, whoa, the city down the road for me, you know, is actually doing stuff, right? You look at the west coast of North America, where you got Vancouver and Victoria doing some good stuff. You have Seattle, Portland, you know, overrated these days. They haven't done anything for years, but they were all that maybe 10 years ago. You have Los Angeles, legend. Like, it's amazing the stuff that they're doing there. They're voted, the citizens have voted to increase the sales tax to fund public transport. They have trains coming. I mean, San Francisco as well for bikes. So it's really your local competition, you know, is kind of heating up, and that is good for you know, for your region. So changing the conversation, looking at the big picture, not only talking about bikes, but remembering that it's just a part of everything that we need to be doing to make our cities more life-size is absolutely key. We're getting there, man. Even the most skeptical politicians in the most, you know, backward Canadian cities regarding, you know, urbanism and mobility, man, it's happening because so many people are doing it. The momentum is strong.
Do you think that there's a possibility or risk that car sales will go up because of what you said with public transportation?
So I feel weird about what I have been saying. What I'm going to say now is that we're all heading into a financial crisis. And that is going to be really bad for a lot of people, and I'm not happy about that. If I only focus, you know, zoom in on mobility, I think it might be a good thing. The financial crisis in 2008-9 saw massive rises in cycling in cities around the world. And I think that the financial crisis that is...
Wait, nu har vi... Just a second. Ole? Jeg tror, vi har et problem.
You have a problem?
Yes. Jeg ved ikke, hvor mødet blev af.
Oh.
Forsvandt vi? Okay. Thank you. Hvordan ser jeg kameraet?
Hey, Pernille, the picture had frozen, but we had the audio.
Okay. Oh.
We've lost audio.
Yeah, hopefully we'll hang on a second here. Hopefully we reconnect.
Yeah.
we go.
Mute, unmute.
No, we're
Okay,
good
can
now.
you hear us now?
Good. Back in
Can you
business.
see us?
Like pointed at somebody.
Yeah.
Can you see us?
Okay. Can you see anything?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay. Well, who can you
Right.
see, Pernille or me?
Smiling face.
Who can you see?
Pernille.
Yes.
Pernille, okay.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Good.
Okay. Okay. I will hold it. Like
Where were we?
We were at the recession and
Yeah.
cars.
So I think if you want to be kind of have a positive spin on, you know, the very, very negative thing that's going to be the recession that they say is coming, is I think we're going to see the same thing as 2008, 9, and we're going to see it on a scale like we never saw back then. We're going to see an absolute massive rise in cycling, desire for walking, and I think it's going to be a really good thing. And also, recession means car sales will fall. That's what happened in 2008 and 9. So we're seeing a repeat of that, but we're going to see it explode, and in a good way, right? Car sales will remain stable or fall, and cycling and pedestrianism is going to go up. The whole tricky part is, you know, the public transport, which I'm sad about, that there's going to be this whole issue about, like, will people want to ride public transport? But hey, right there, you got bikes and you got walking.
Thank you so much, Michael.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I'm not even sure because we can't see any video right now. Cam, can we just leave and call up again in just about 1 minute?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay, we'll
Good.
call up in just less than 1 minute.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
See you soon. Thank you. See you, Michael. All right, you guys, if anyone wants to get up and stretch, grab another coffee or something, we'll be back in a minute. Great questions. All right. There we go. Back in business.
Hi.
Back on the bike.
All right. Okay. Let's continue the tour.
Okay.
And yeah,
Guys.
have fun. Bye. Okay. All right. So sorry about the technical challenge that we had. I hope it won't repeat.
No problem.
So that was a fun coincidence running into Michael Colville Anderson.
It was.
He's quite a famous guy, I guess, around here and in Canada too. We can be proud of him.
He actually grew up in Calgary, right?
He's from Calgary, I think.
Yeah, I
isn't
think
that right?
Danish. He's a Danish ancestry, but I believe was either born in Canada or lived in Canada for a long time, and then moved back to Denmark.
Yes. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I know there's a couple people with us that are from Calgary, including me, originally.
Are you from Calgary too, Kim?
Originally, yeah. I thought he looked familiar.
So, Cam, I didn't get to ask the question that you posed about safety. So maybe we can talk about it now. Can you elaborate on the safety and public spaces that you were talking about?
Oh yeah, sure. So obviously a value of a sustainable, livable city is having vibrant public spaces and Copenhagen has become more and more convivial. Victoria tries to, cities around the world try to. But in light of the fact that obviously there's a serious pandemic right now and may recur, and this might be something that we see more and more of in the future, how do you think you can balance the values of wanting to get out and be around other people and have these convivial and vibrant public spaces, but also ensure, you know, safety and not encourage the spread of infectious diseases and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, to be honest, I am mostly imagining and dreaming of a world where we don't have to think about pandemics. I feel like for me, to answer that question, it's more maybe in the future we will try to have a world where pandemics don't spread as easily. Like, you know, maybe we'll have a little bit less traveling fast by airplanes and all of that, and then kind of like tackle pandemics that way so that they don't spread as fast. Because even with the most amazing infrastructure and urban planning, which is so important also in a pandemic time, I think human touch and being close to other people is a basic human need that we probably won't ever learn to live without, and probably shouldn't as well. But what do you think about that, Ole, that with if pandemics are reoccurring, how do we manage public spaces and other people around us?
Well, I do think that, like you said, we've got to find a way to make sure that our world is geared to not spreading pandemics as fast. We need to slow down. Of course, that's one of our guiding principles in Cycling Without Age as well, is slow down, be mindful. Do we really need to travel the world all the time with low-cost airlines? Or can we do differently? So I think what the pandemic has taught me is also the fact that we don't need as much stuff as we probably thought we did in the past. I think a lot of sales has gone down. You know, of course, with the lockdown, restaurants and so on, their revenues have gone down. But I think also we as consumers, and actually I hate the word consumer, don't you?
It sounds like an addiction.
Yeah, exactly. We're citizens, we're human beings, we're not consumers. But we are considered to be consumers. We're essentially businesses considering us to be our sole purpose on this planet is to consume. And I think we've seen during this pandemic, we've seen that we don't need to consume to be. We actually feel much better. We're healthier. We've slowed down. We're mindful. So I think we've certainly learned something from this. I certainly personally feel that I've learned a lot of the things that I can do without. So I think maybe we need to have a conversation about what do we need to bring along that we've learned during the pandemic, and what can we shed? What don't we need anymore?
Where have you spent the I mean, you haven't spent as much money, I guess, because the shops have been closed, but the things that you have bought, where has that been, Ole, in this time?
Well, I certainly, I haven't really bought stuff, but I've been a lot to the greengrocer, to, of course, to the supermarket, a little bit to the butcher. I've been out to the garden center as well, to buy seeds, to buy pots and things like that. So I think we're kind of rediscovering some of the virtues of the old times.
Yeah, you've turned your terrace, your rooftop terrace in the city center into a beautiful edible garden.
Yes.
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're working from home and suddenly you can actually do that, which has so much value.
I see in the chat some students can relate to that.
Yeah, so I would love, I'm a little bit hesitant to go and check out the comments because then last time I lost the video. Can I ask you, Cam, to tell me what questions have been asked?
Sure. Sharon, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for showing us Copenhagen. I'm Sharon. So I was wondering, how do people become interested in cycling more and more and more in your country? We know, like, usually kids learn from family, but do they get incentivized at school? Are there any incentives for adults to ride more their bikes? Because many cities and countries are trying to create ideas and implement ways of like fostering the using of bikes. So I'm very curious to get to know more the background of this amazing cycling culture that you do have.
Okay, so that I can talk about that for a couple of hours, but I'll try to give just a couple of points at least. First of all, just like I think you already know it, but it's totally worth it. But let's talk about what can be done. For me, one of the most important things is not to talk about cycling as something dangerous or something special. Like you said, a lot of people learn as kids from their parents. It's just a normal thing to do. But if we complicate it by expecting people to dress up and buy very expensive gear just to go to the grocery store, then they won't do it. It has to just be something normal and everyday, like, which it definitely is. There's no need to complicate it. So, like, talking about helmets and protective gear and the dangers of cycling and cycling training and trainers in school and all of those things, for me, those are barriers to just get on the bike and just use it to go from A to B. It's a mode of transportation. It's not, doesn't have to be your identity. um, that's definitely one of the things that can help. And then I think what also needs to be done, I think that Michael already said it, but it's like you I think that people, you should ask your politicians to make cycling easy, to have parking spaces for cycles, for bicycles, because they are waiting for big numbers of cyclists before they make the infrastructure, but it's definitely the other way around. I think one of the most important places to start is at schools. You know, if I sometimes get tendencies to be a little bit like, I would love to just ban stuff. I think it should be banned to drive your children to school in your car. It's the it's the ultimate place to learn how to ride your bike, is to be motivated to go and together in groups. They all have to go to school. So, and the more children that ride or walk to school, the more safe it is. But now a lot of parents feel like it's not safe, so they will drive their own kids. And of course, one of the problems with that is that what was it I wanted to say? I forgot. But it definitely means that that it's not safe to drive to school, and that's too bad. And I think actually we are just stopping here because Ole can tell us something about resilience and beautiful urban planning.
Well, we're on a bike lane, right, a bike bridge right now. And Pernille, if you just pan down over these, this 6-lane motorway that is cutting through Copenhagen. It's called the River Boulevard, which sounds like a wonderful space, but it's, you know, it's full of cars. And actually, if you go back about 100 years, there was a beautiful river, small river running just down. That's why the shape of the road is the way it is. It's just bending its well through the landscape. But then, of course, at some point, I think it was probably around the time when there wasn't really any proper sewage systems in Copenhagen. So it was probably beginning to get a little bit smelly, and they decided to put it into tubes. And the next thing was to actually put cement onto an asphalt on top of it. And now you've got this motorway that is cutting through Copenhagen. But there are plans now to actually open up the river underneath, so that you can once again reclaim that space from cars. I'm a firm believer that you know, cars are probably the biggest pestilence in our cities. They're you know, they're coming in from they're making noise. They're polluting, and they're usually coming in from around Copenhagen, just taking up space. So they're taking up 10 times as much space as bikes. So I believe that if we inconvenience the cars as much as we possibly can, then people will find alternatives. You know, it's not a God-given that people necessarily have to drive in cars, but if you give them the opportunity, if you give them the infrastructure, then people will drive cars, just as if you give them a really good kind of driving infrastructure, just like this bike lane here, people will ride their bikes. So I think this is a very good example also of the fact that, you know, Copenhagen is not perfect. Yes, we have got a lot of things right, but we also have a lot of things that aren't right yet. And I think, you know, we wanted to see if we could take you around and show you just a few of those places in Copenhagen. This is one of them.
Ole or Pernille,
Yes.
beyond great cycling infrastructure, what would you be most proud of or most impressed with in terms of what Copenhagen's done from a resilience or sustainability standpoint? Beyond transportation, what other things come to mind?
Okay, so beyond infrastructure.
Beyond cycling, beyond transportation infrastructure, what other
Yes.
elements of Copenhagen are impressive?
I really like how, so I don't know if it's special to Copenhagen. I hope and I think that a lot of cities might have done something like this, but made parks and green areas in different places be able to collect a lot of rainwater naturally. Because I think that there is an understanding that that there's going to be more rainfall in the future. That's one of the one of the effects of global warming. So if we do, if we put cement all over our cities, then the water has nowhere where to go. So in Copenhagen, they've made a lot of places that will collect the rainwater naturally and seep down into the ground. And then I also really enjoy how there have been a lot of wild, like they're reintroducing kind of wild nature. It's not virgin wild nature because of course everything has been demolished multiple times in a big city like this, but they are actually starting in different places to let nature be. So it's just a green space, and then whatever pops up, whatever trees, whatever plants that want to live there. So they call it wild on purpose. Just let it be and let's see what happens. I also know that in a lot of municipalities in the Copenhagen area, they're not allowed to remove trees. They're not allowed to remove any trees. If it's part of the sustainability goals, like that's how they try to obtain these goals. So for instance, if they have to do some kind of infrastructure and move a tree or cut down a tree, they have to plant twice as much. So I think definitely a lot of the reintroduction of trying to reintroduce variation, biodiversity, and natural green places, wild places in the city is what I'm really proud of.
And I guess actually this particular stretch that we're on right now is actually an old railway track that has been repurposed to becoming a green space. So there's a really wide bike lane that cuts right through, and you can actually ride from one end of Copenhagen to the other, and only crossing a few roads as you go along. And there's a lot of green space here as well. I think actually in here there are gardens.
Yes.
So communal gardens there as well.
Communal gardens that you know, you just trust that people will take care of them, which they do. I don't know if you guys notice what I'm noticing right now, but isn't it amazing how much noise cars make?
Mm.
I think the sound of just other people and bikes is so beautiful. And I feel like when we were standing on that bridge, I could hardly even hear what Ole was saying, and he was right next to me. So that's another thing that I definitely have to say about cars, is how noisy they are. I almost feel like Copenhagen is back to normal. It feels really weird after such a long time with distancing, physical distancing, as I prefer to call it.
Just look at that. Look at how many people are out.
So I would love to hear your questions, and since I'm not brave enough to go in and read them,
Sure, I can.
please read them to me if you can.
There's a question about food systems and
Yeah.
urban agriculture, and you could talk about that both in general or also in terms of, you know, the recent disruption. I know there's a huge move in Victoria. Nurseries and garden shops have had their busiest April in history this year as more and more people look to grow their own food. Maybe you could speak about food in the city?
Yes. So growing food in the city.
Of course, I think Cam, did we take one of your teams up to the roof garden in Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're quite good friends with Livia, who runs the place and who's founded the roof garden, and she's now branching out into a lot of other things as well. And actually during the initial phase of the lockdown, she did something quite amazing, because of course all the growers of carrots and potatoes and cabbage and whatever, you know, they didn't have anywhere to sell their produce because the restaurants weren't open. And so what she did was she actually made it available for us as consumers. If we could go and actually buy it and pick it up and get some of the best produce, some of the best organic produce that money can buy. And so it actually brings the food systems right into the city as well. We have some of these co-ops as well. I've been a member for the past 10 years of one of them, where you as a citizen, you can join, and then you go down and you help pack all the cabbages and root fruits and fruits and things like that, and then you help hand it out as well. It's a wonderful way to engage in the food systems as well. Make sure that you also you select some of the good growers.
There was a question that this communal garden, do you know if it's volunteers that are maintaining it, or how that system works? Do you know about that?
The one that we just passed, that is actually all the neighbors that are looking after it, but it's not, you don't sign up, but you can come down, and I think they have different hours as well, where there are people who know about growing, so you can learn about planting seeds and how to fertilize it in a natural way, and so you become knowledgeable of something like that.
I just want to add, I think we can definitely talk about more about the food situation and the farming, but I just wanted to come back to my point about cycling to school, because I remember what my point was. The one thing that I think that is a resilient city is a city that thinks about all of its inhabitants, just like what Michael said, that they are the experts, but not just everybody, that it's people that don't have resources, who don't have money, that you think about them as well when you plan your city. And I think that's why urban spaces like these are just perfect and wonderful, because it allows for children especially maybe to go out and do things that in some cities you have to be rich to be able to have green areas around you. And that just really, really reinforces the difference that there is between rich and poor. So if a family is really poor, they might not have a car. And if everybody else drives their children to school, then it's going to affect the one family or the two families that can't afford a car in a very, very negative way, because cycling won't be safe for them. And then they don't have the same access to go to school as the richer families. And that is just one of the points of why riding a car to school is a bad idea.
What if you turn around and face me? Okay, so now we've arrived at something called it's called the Black Square, and we were just at the Red Square. And actually, we're going through an area right now with a lot of ethnic diversity, and it also shows in the way that they've designed this part of town. They have palm trees here. They also have things from the Middle East. Then they have these wonderful tables here, where you can play all kinds of board games, and also this is a fountain. we're not going to go up this hill at the end here. I think we're probably possibly going to topple if we try and do that. Maybe we're actually running a little bit low on battery here. But maybe Pernille, maybe you want to just talk a little bit about those pamphlets that you've got in your hand.
Yes. Okay. So this is so much fun. I think that because sometimes you feel like why isn't everybody just doing the right thing? But you can actually do something about it. We found out that parking wardens are not working during the pandemic. So that means that some bad people think, okay, I can just park wherever. Because who needs public spaces? Who needs green areas to walk around in? And Ole and I couldn't really live with that, and we were getting more and more frustrated. But rather than, yelling to each other about how stupid that is, we found out that we could make a little pamphlet, which initially was very negative, but then we thought we could make it fun instead. So we made this thing. I'm gonna translate it to you. It's in Danish. We are putting it in the windows of the cars, and having a lot of fun doing it. Of course, the cars mostly that are illegally parked. Okay, it's this. Thank you so much for parking here. It's really too much these days with green and recreative.
Parks.
With green parks and beautiful areas in our capital. We, those who make the economy run, we need a car to be able to get fast to where we need to go to make money. These last couple of years, politicians from the left have removed car lanes and parking spaces. But the fact is that parks, bicycle lanes, and public spaces don't create growth. We are tired of constantly thinking about the rights of children and elders and so-called weaker road users. A capital isn't supposed to be cozy, and it's not supposed to be livable, whatever that means. So Copenhagen should be famous for growth, easy to get around in cars, and mass tourism. We're tired of hearing that a small number of majority is complaining about noise and pollution and traffic accidents. It's just simply part of being in a capital that is growing. If you don't like it, well then. So if you agree to that we need to take back all of the streets, all of the public spaces, and that we need to make it easier to get around by car, and that we have to put parking spaces on all the public squares of the city, please go to Facebook and support the lobby for the rights of car owners in the capital. Of course, this is so much fun to put in the window pane. I think it's people find it hopefully a little. They can see that it's ironic and that it's a joke. Some people might think it's serious, but this Facebook page doesn't exist. So so that's our little contribution to fewer cars.
I know that there were some more questions, but unfortunately we're running out of battery and we have to leave now as well. But this was so much fun. I'm going to try and see if I can turn it around now. There it is. Yeah.
Yes.
So
thank you for joining us on this tour. It's been wonderful to have you with us.
Yeah.
Oh,
if you have any more questions, feel free to drop us an email or send us the questions through social media,
Yes.
and we'll see if we can answer some of the questions.
Your email address?
It's Ole@cycling.age.org, and yours is Pernille@cycling.age.org.